Let's take a look at creating an electrical plan. You can use the project we worked with last module, or the one from the beginning of class, or start with a different file to add electrical systems. In the mechanical plan that we did last module, we left these mechanical units outside of the grid. So what we should be able to do is to select them, use the move tool, move them back into the grid. Because we were using the HVAC floor plan, we didn't check the ceiling. And you see how they'll automatically update because it's a system. So now we're going to create an electrical plan. We can insert some of the fixtures that we need by going to Insert, Load Family, and Electrical. We have an architectural and an MEP, but by using the MEP, we can go under Electrical Power and Distribution and load the panel that we're going to be using for all of our light fixtures. We'll use the single phase panel, 120 volt, surface mounted. And by bringing this panel in, we'll be able to connect all of the light fixtures to the different circuits. We can also load in other electrical families under the MEP folder, under Electric Power and Terminals, to bring in the lighting switches. Under this one file, you'll have several different types of lighting switches, which will have more information in them and be able to connect to the light fixtures than if we were to go under electrical architectural, electrical power terminals, and see all of these kind of 2D images of different switches and outlets. It depends on what you're working with. If you're working with an architectural plan, you can use those. An electrical plan that has information stored, we need to go underneath the MEP lighting to go to internal and find the light fixtures. The light fixtures that we're going to use are the troffer lights, and we'll stick with the 2x2 in the panels, the ceiling panels that we're using. Now we can go to the System tab and you'll see all the different settings for electrical. But before we start to place our systems, we will need to set up our power distribution. If you click on the small little arrow that's in the bottom of the panel, you'll see all of the different electrical settings and systems that we can establish. In this file, the voltage and the distribution systems are already set up. But in most files, when you start with the template, this isn't here. So you'd have to set it up or bring in this information from a template. These are the different voltages that you're going to use. Most of the time on smaller projects, we would use the 120 and the 240. So it would have a name, a value, a min and maximum of about 5% difference. And then the distribution system is what it's going to be called. The 120, 240 single with the 3 wires, and the line-to-line voltage being the 240 and the line-to-ground being the 120. Also in the Manage tab under MEP settings, you'll see the same thing. So I'd like to show you what would happen if you start a brand new drawing using the architectural template, or you have a project that you've already been working with and now you'd like to create an electrical plan. Under the Systems tab, under the Electrical Settings panel, there you notice there's just one default. So in the voltage, under voltage, you could give it a name. So you'll create 2. One will be 120 and the other one will be 240. And then under the distribution system, you'd create the name of the distribution system and set it up here with the 240 and 120 voltage. So I'm setting it up so that the voltage definitions are 120 and 240, and then the distribution system will be the name of it. So I'm closing out of that new file just to show you that you might see that in a file, and going back to the one that already had the distributions, the voltage definitions and distribution system set up. For the 120-240 system, now let's pick lighting fixture and place it on a face. It's not a vertical system. We can pick up our troffer light 2x2, and then in the ceiling plan, set it within the ceiling grid. And we'll just do a couple of small ones for this assignment instead of laying out an entire layout. You can do that for one of your projects in your design studios. So now that you have the light fixtures, we're going to create an electrical plan. Go to the first floor plan and then right-click and duplicate this plan. Now, if you had any annotation, when you pick duplicate, it will take all of that annotation out. And now we're going to highlight the new plan, right-click, and rename it so that we have a new one called Electrical Plan. Go ahead and pick OK. And now we need to set it up so that it looks like an electrical plan. Under Properties, you'll see that the discipline is still Architecture. So under Properties, we'll change the discipline to Electrical and pick Apply. And this will change it all to a light halftone image. Then if you have any furniture, you can right-click and hide those pieces of furniture under the category. And anything else that might not be in an electrical plan, you can select it and hide it in the category. Now, some offices like to show a couple of lines that represent where the door is. I'm not going to change the view range right now until we already have the light fixtures in place. But in order to see the light fixtures, we do need to change the view range. Go ahead and pick view range, change the offset to something like 10 feet for the top. And the cut plane needs to be up close to the 8-foot mark so that you can actually see those fixtures. And if we drop it down to something a little bit smaller, like 5 feet, we'll be able to see the doors. So now you can kind of work with your electrical fixtures. Later on, we'll come in here and change it from 5 feet to 8 feet so that we won't see the door swings. We want to be able to see where to put the switches, the switch and the outlets. So under the Systems tab, we want to pick Electrical Equipment so that we can pick up our single-phase panel and put the panel in one of the rooms where you would put an electrical panel with all the breakers. And right now that panel doesn't have a label or a distribution system. But if you select the panel and then use the drop down, once you place it, you escape out, you select it and use the drop down in the options bar to pick that 120-240 single that we created in that electrical settings dialog box. Now we can add a device. We'll go to Device in the Systems tab and pick Lighting. And then you'll see under this lighting switches, you have a whole list of different switches. which is different than if you were in the architectural folder, you would have separate 2D switches. Here we're going to use a single switch, although this might be a three-way switch if you had a switch at the other side of the hallway. We'll keep it simple and do a single switch. I went ahead and got close to one of the walls and then clicked to add that switch. Now we're going to develop a system. Highlight one of your light fixtures and pick the power button. The power button will help us to edit the circuit, so go ahead and pick Edit Circuit and add other circuits or add other light fixtures to the system, similar to what we did in the mechanical plan. We're going to select the panel, so we'll pick the Select Panel icon and select that panel. We shouldn't have any issues with selecting the panel because we did establish the distribution systems. We can pick Finish, and now when you select the light and go to the electrical circuits tab at the top there, you'll see this kind of dashed line that establishes a box around the system, which is kind of the panel, and you see how it's got the hidden line from one fixture to the other, and then an arrow going back to where the panel is. This is what you'll see on especially larger projects. The arrow points to where the panel is. Now we need to add the switch to the system. We can select the light, pick Switch, and then select Switch, and select that single switch as your source for that light, or for that lighting system. Now that we have it all connected, we can select the light fixture and recheck it to make sure that the panel is in place, and we're ready to add the wire. We can pick the arc wire in the Systems tab and then left click from one fixture to the other. Now in this example I'm picking the switch, but I didn't get far enough to the connector. You'll need to left click the center of the light and then left click for the arc and then left click the center of the other light. So in this case I left clicked in the light and then a little bit further away and then again for the arrow. So I'm going to go back and delete this wire. So I'll go back and delete this wire because what I need to do is to get far enough back until you see that small connector and then click out in space and then click towards the center of the light fixture, and now let's change the line type. It should be a hidden line type. We can type in VG, and at the very bottom you'll see wires. If you highlight wires and pick the override button for the lines, you can change the pattern to hidden and the weight depending on your office standards. Some companies like to have the line weight bold for those electrical lines. You may want to make it a little bit lighter than the fixtures themselves. You can always change here the line weight by selecting the override and changing the weight here to 3 or 4, whatever you'd like to use. So let's clean up the graphics a little before we put our electrical outlets. We can select the mechanical system line work, right click and hide and view those categories until we get to the fixtures themselves. Those mechanical supply diffusers, you can hold your control key down and select all 4 of them and then uncheck those mechanical arrows so that you just get the box itself. And then if you like, you can select all of them, right click and go to Override Graphics in View by element or by category. If you override graphics in view by category, you can put a check mark in front of half tone and then pick OK, and all of the mechanical equipment, except for the main furnace, will go to kind of a half tone. So we'll do the same thing for the furnace here. And now it looks more like an electrical plan. Now we're ready to load our receptacles. We can go to Insert and Family and Electrical and MEP, and then to Electrical Power and Terminals. These are the receptacles or outlets, the plugs that we, plug electrical fixtures into. So there are receptacles for different voltage. We're going to look for the duplex receptacle, and we'll double click on the duplex receptacle to load it. It actually brings in a standard and a GFCI for our ground fault circuit interrupter, or the GFI, sometimes called, for the any wet places that need electrical. Here we can place a standard receptacle on any wall that's bigger than 2 feet, and there's a standard code that says that they need to be 12 feet apart, or at least have a spot anywhere that can reach within the 6 feet. And sometimes that code changes, but not very often. In these smaller rooms, we'll just put one on each wall. Let's take a look at tagging these fixtures. If we go to Annotate and pick Tag by Category, and you select the panel, we'll need to load the electrical equipment tag. In this case, we're going to go underneath the Annotation folder and then Electrical, so that we can pick up the annotation tags for the electrical equipment. There it is there. Now that it's loaded, we can go back to Annotate and then pick the Tag by Category icon, and I'll take the check mark out of Leader and click right on that panel. Now, normally we don't call them just number 1, so we're going to change the mark for that panel. We can move the number down and then select the panel, and in Properties you can scroll down and change for this panel the mark under Identity Data to LP1. That way we have a lighting panel of 1, and if it was a bigger project, we'd have several others. And so we can tag the light fixtures by picking Tag by Category, and you'll see that we need to go through the same process to select the annotation for the electrical. And in Annotation folder, you'll see Electrical. In the Electrical folder, you'll see the Lighting Fixture tag. Now with that tag loaded, we can go to Annotate and Tag by Category those 2 light fixtures. And again, it doesn't have a label or a name, so we might not want that box around it. We'll select it and then change in the drop down there from having the box around it to standard. Now let's go back and highlight the light fixture, pick Edit Type, and then under Edit Type, so that they all will change, we're going to change the type mark to LF1 for the light fixture 1, which would go back to a legend of that text, which will refer back to a legend explaining what type of light fixture that is. And for the receptacles, if you select the receptacle, you can change it from a standard to a GFCI right here in the drop down. If you're in the bathroom or a basement in the garage, you can take a look at the codes and see here how many you would need for a basement, for instance. Also wanted to let you know that you can double click on any light fixture here and select the light source and pick Edit for the light source and change the way that the light comes out of that fixture. There are several different configurations of the light and how it's distributed, and these fixtures will need a connector. If there's not an electrical connector that will connect the wires to it, the power wires to it, you can go to the Create tab and pick Electrical Connector. This one already has one in it. I just double clicked on a light fixture to go into the family to show you that we can use those tools also.